Hello, everyone. I am Jay Beach alongside Christopher Zunk.
That's me.
Tonight, we'll be heading out west to the Bay Area where they have no Stanley Cups, but will still have two sure bets for the Hockey Hall of Fame. Plus, we'll find the long lost fifth Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, Tomas. And if the shark's teeth don't get you, the beards will. All that and more as the Lunchroom Syndicate presents their completely factual, not at all subjective list of the San Jose Sharks all-time team.
If you are new to the Lunchroom Syndicate's all-time teams, let me be the first to say welcome. But if you are new, let me explain what we're doing. We are picking all-time team. We're going by positions. We have 6 positions in total: 3 forwards, 2 defensive groups, and the goalie or goalie position. We have the left wing, center, and right wing, which all have 4 spots each because you have 4 lines in the NHL. I bet you didn't know that. Fun facts are fun. We have the left and right defensive side, left-handed and right-handed defensemen. That's how we're kind of going by with those. There's only 3 of those per position, and we will take 2 goalies.
We're going to tear off each player as we go through. We'll let you know who we are considering from the team when deciding the best of the best for the Sharks franchise. We'll tear them off with the low tier being that golden orange, the middle tier being silver, and the top tier, the sure bets for making the team, the teal tier.
San Jose is one of my favorite in terms of looks because they look like my Jaguars, and I just love that color combination. I just think it's a really, really good color combination, and yeah, so it's gonna be fun.
Before we get started with each position, though, we will be deciding upon the face of the franchise. Christopher, there's been a bunch of really good players here in the history of San Jose, but really it comes down to 2: Patrick Marleau or Joe Thornton, both out of the 97 NHL draft, went number 1 and number 2, and both spent a long time in San Jose. Patrick Marleau with more time, with 1,551 games. Joe Thornton, just a measly 1,104. I mean, it barely counts. Like he got a cup of coffee, but maybe only like 1 refill. I mean, just not much there for Joe Thornton. We discussed this. We're going to do something for the first time here. We're not going to pick between the 2.
No, it seems this is the rare circumstance where these 2 players played so much of their time together as well. And it's a near impossibility when you talk San Jose Sharks, you talk face of the franchise, to differentiate between Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton. I don't know how you do that. Yes, Patrick Marleau spent predominantly most of his career there compared to Joe Thornton, who had like 7 or 8 years in Boston somehow and still played 1,100 games in San Jose. But it's too hard for me to differentiate these 2, especially with them playing together.
Yeah, the success of the team really laid on the shoulders of these 2 players collectively. When these 2 guys were on, the team was on. Both tremendous players. Patrick Marleau with 1,100 points. Joe Thornton just under that at 1,055, but played 400 fewer games. So the points per game goes to Jumbo Joe. But it's still a hell of a points per game there for Patrick Marleau. I don't want to differentiate. You don't want to differentiate our face of the franchise, combining Patrick Marleau and Jumbo Joe Thornton.
Jumbo Joe Marleau. Let's start left D.
Left defense.
Just out of the blue, why the fuck not?
Okay, well, why the fuck not, Zunk? Because normally our left defense is the stronger of the defensive side, and we're going to have a few more names to choose from. But the bigger names, I think, we're going to find over on the right defensive side for only the second time that since we've been doing this.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of teams now.
But who are we going to be looking at here on the lefty?
We have Brendan Dillon, Christian Ehrhoff, Scott Hannon, Jeff Norton, Sandis Ozolinich, Marcus Ragnarsson.
I don't know if you're doing that on purpose.
That one I didn't. Mike Rath. I know this last name. Mike Rath. That's not it, but that's what I'm calling him. Brad Stewart. What is it?
Rathji.
Mike Rathji, Brad Stewart, Gary Suter, and Mark Edward Vlasic.
It's one of my favorite parts of doing this is the pronunciation of names.
I'm pretty sure our Ragnarsson that I had the emphasis on the very wrong syllable because it sounded weird coming out.
Just Ragnarsson.
Well, Jay, tell us about Brendan Dillon.
Brendan. There's not a whole lot to talk with here. He put in a good amount of time. He's a real solid defenseman. He's not somebody that I think of for all-time players, but he does have a decent number of games at 439, so nice tenure there. But he's going to be a low-tier guy for me.
Next up is Christian Ehrhoff. Should tell you something that I didn't even realize he played for San Jose.
Started off in San Jose.
Yes. I know him from Vancouver more, and obviously Buffalo, but that's a different scenario. There's not a lot here. I know he's an offensive minded defenseman more, so the point total doesn't wow me. So to me, he's in that same golden, yellowish, orange tier.
I think Christian Ehrhoff really started to establish himself, but didn't fully commit to that until he got to Vancouver. But he started to show signs that, he's going to be worth a big contract, just not as big as what Buffalo had to pay. Scott Hannon is up next. Scott Hannon with 626 games played. And for that reason, that tenure there is a solid tenure. So I'm going to go mid-tier silver.
Jeff Norton, 225 games played, a lot less, over 2 different stints. I'm going to make a note of that because we have seemingly a lot of that on this team.
Yeah. There's a lot of players, once they leave, they're like, yeah, I'll go back to San Jose.
Yeah, understandable. Nothing wows me. He has a solid points to games played ratio for a defenseman. I do like that. 93 and 225 isn't bad, but I don't know if that gets him above the bottom tier for me.
Yeah, Sandis Ozolinich from 92 to 95, and then again pulled back another year later, 2007 and 8. Only 202 games, which is why I'm not going to bump him up to the top tier. A little bit more than a cup of coffee, but not much more. But I do like that he was there early on for the San Jose Sharks, and 132 points in 212 games is a hell of a point per game average. I'm going to go mid-tier.
Next up is my favorite name, Marcus Ragnarsson. That's not right. Ragnarsson. I combined 2 names.
I still don't know why you're emphasizing that A so much.
That's what I'm doing now. That's his name now. Ragnarsson. Played for quite a while in San Jose, 1995 to 2003. 519 games played. That's a solid amount. Probably similar in that Scott Hanna range in a lot of ways. So in that respect, it's probably mid-tier if Scott Hanna is mid-tier.
Yeah, he's my top pick so far. The next name up is Mike Rathji, 671 games. That is going to be the second most out of our left-handed shot defensemen. 155 points, but not as much of an offensive defenseman here. Real solid defensive guy. I don't know if I have enough to put him as a top tier, but he's a really high mid tier.
Next up, Brad Stewart, a name I can pronounce properly. Once again, 2 more stints.
It's actually Brad Stewart.
Brad Stew's art. 2 stints, 486 games played, 170 points. Again, kind of that same range as Ragnarsson and Scott Hanna. Solid defenseman, I thought, during his time as well. I would set him into the silver tier myself.
Ooh, we're going to have a decision to make later. Gary Suter. I think Gary Suter's just a step behind. I think he's really close to Sandus, but a step behind. So just to help distinguish between the two of them, I probably would have him as a mid tier, but since I know he's a step behind, I'm going to go bottom tier.
Mm-hmm. And finally, we got Mark-Edward Vlasic, the longest tenured left-handed defenseman, as you alluded to earlier. 1,035 games played, 326 points. This is an interesting one for me because games played alone and tenure, he's obviously top tier, but I never thought of him as a top tier defenseman.
Really?
I thought he was a really good defenseman. He is top tier with his team, but I never thought of him as an elite.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of his, so I'm not as hesitant as you are going with that. I am a fan of the Pickle Man, and if it's not that Pickle Man, I am a fan of the other Pickle Man. Who's the other Pickle Man? He's actually the son of a pickle.
A cucumber?
No, Gergen's son.
Yikes.
So Vlasic is our number 1 on here. Now we have 2 more spots, 3, 4, and 5 players that we are choosing between. I put Brad Stewart behind. I'd take Sandus Olsmanich over Brad Stewart at least.
Okay.
So if we're getting rid of them, now we have 2 of them off.
We are at the 3 that I was at initially. Mike RICCI,
okay.
Ragnarsson, and Scott Hanna. The tough part
there is
here
an
is
N at the end of Hannon.
Did I say Hanna?
Every time.
They're very similar in terms of stats for me. So I can't really differentiate here. Ragnarsson does have the better points to games ratio. Mike RICCI has a significant edge in games played. I'm probably leaning towards RICCI at 2 and Ragnarsson at 3.
Damn, we agree way too often. Our left shot defenseman for the San Jose Sharks, Mark-Edward Vlasic, Mike RICCI, Marcus Ragnarsson. And why don't we go ahead and finish off and make sure we give them the D this time, the right D.
We have the right defense, less names, bigger names. Jay, who do we have on the right side?
Robert Blake, Daniel Boyle, Justin Braun, Brent Burns, Jason Demers, and ERIK KARLSSON.
First name on this list, the legendary Rob Blake, someone that always spent a couple of years here in San Jose. Towards the tail, I'm guessing the tail end of his career, if I'm right, if I'm thinking correctly. 75 points, 143 games is really good. I mean, I don't really know him for San Jose, so I'm torn between the bottom and mid tier. Name recognition, he's a mid tier, or he's a top tier, but obviously,
yeah, he retired as a Shark. So you're going mid tier for Rob?
I'm torn between mid and low. So probably mid.
I got to go mid tier. I can't put more disrespect on Blake's name than that. Hell of a defenseman. Just didn't have a long tenure in San Jose.
Yep.
Dan Boyle. Dan Boyle, 431 games, 269 points. Dan Boyle is damn good. High end mid-tier.
Justin Braun, 607 games played, a long time. A solid defenseman, good defensive defenseman, only relatively speaking, 154 points. I don't feel comfortable putting him in the same tier as Dan Boyle and Rob Blake, though.
That's where I'm at as well. Brett Burns, who is still in San Jose, and he's put up 660 games, 511 points. The only defenseman who hit triple digits in goals, Brett Burns, is top tier.
That is a bright ass suit that our next candidate, Jason Demers, has. Wow. 300 games played, 98 points. Yeah, he's a good defenseman. Probably leaning towards the bottom though.
It's the suit that even gets him on the bottom tier. Erik Karlsson. Whoo. He hasn't been getting a lot of love since going to San Jose. Everybody's like, oh, where's Erik Karlsson? Why isn't he playing like he did in Ottawa? And I'm looking at it going, this is the same guy. This is who he was in Ottawa. And you look at those points, 85 points through 109 games. Are you kidding? What do you want? His plus minus has never been great. Has it been worse? Yeah, but he's on I can't say a worse team because Ottawa sucked balls. But he's not on a good team. He's on an aging team. He's an aging guy. He's putting up the points. He's putting up the points that he should be putting up. I'm gonna give him some respect and go mid-tier.
Yeah, to your point about the shit he's getting, I think he was the easy target because he came over. He was supposed to be, he was the last piece, which, by the way, they made the finals this first year, right? They made the Western Conference final this first year. But he came in, he was a huge acquisition. They gave up a ton for him. The problem that San Jose had wasn't that they got Erik Karlsson. It was that they let their team get old as dirt. And, Joe Thornton got old, Patrick Marleau got old, and they were still productive, but they didn't really have anyone that was coming up outside of a couple names. They let Pavelski go, which was probably a mistake. Erik Karlsson got the brunt end of their decline because it was the easy thing to do because of what they gave up. But I agree. I think he's been everything is advertised in San Jose. Just,
Without
that was a unfortunate, what's expectations.
Okay, so we have Brett Burns is on here. Now we have two more spots between Dan Boyle, Rob Blake, Erik Karlsson. There's an easy number 2 for me.
Dan Boyle?
Yep. Erik Karlsson, who is, oh man, putting up a better point per game than Rob fucking Blake. But is, more underappreciated, where Rob Blake, was still getting the praise of a Rob Blake while he was in San Jose. So which way do you lean?
I'm going to lean Erik Karlsson, and I'm looking at stats because I was curious what they were this year. And I realized that 2020, 2021 stats are also not on here. So we're missing an entire season's worth of stats with him.
So his games played is actually higher than Rob's already.
Yes.
And I can't make a good case for Rob Blake other than I love Rob Blake.
Yeah, I mean, Rob Blake's a legend, but this is strictly encompassing the San Jose Shark tenures.
Damn, that means Rob, you played for 3 teams and you're only making one of them, bud.
On the right D, we have chosen Brett Burns, Dan Boyle, and ERIK KARLSSON, which, if I'm being frank, is actually a really solid good group. We've got the D out of the way. We've done the defense. I always like to leave goalies toward the end, so let's go with down the middle, the center position.
Centers. We are looking at one of my favorite centers to ever play hockey, Curtis Brown. We have Logan Couture, Vincent Damphus, Tomas Ninja Hertel, Kelly KISIO, Joe Pavelski, Mike RICCI, and Jumbo Joe Thornton. My Curtis Brown puck. Curtis Brown had 2 short tenures in San Jose, only 123 games played. More offensive skill than what his role ever called for. A really solid utility guy. The only reason his name is on here for the Sharks is, again, he's one of my favorites, but that doesn't mean he's one of my personal favorites that I can put him anything above a bottom tier.
Logan Couture, a Shark for life, well, so far. 700 games plus played already, 546 points in those games. He's a teal tier for me. Just an absolute great player for them. I think their current captain. Great player.
Vincent Damphus. Just a great in the NHL here. 289 points in 385 games for the San Jose Sharks. Is going to be a mid-tier player for him.
Next up, we got what you said was the 5th Ninja Turtle, and I would like to correct you and say he's the 6th Ninja Turtle because you forgot about Venus.
No, I didn't. Unfortunately, I can't forget about Venus.
Yeah, that show was bad.
They gave a turtle boobs.
They fucking did.
It's worse than what Michael Bay did to him.
Thomas Hertl, excellent player. Came out his first couple years like a rocket. Great, kind of fell off a bit and has steadily come back to what he started as. I would put him. He's been one of my favorite players in the league lately. So, like, for me, I'd probably put him in the mid tier. But
him being a solid mid tier type player, but being a Ninja Hurdle and being both of one of our favorites, there we go.
Fair enough.
Kelly KISIO, another name that you should remember.
That name does ring a lot of bells. I just
New York Rangers.
Okay.
So started off in 91 with San Jose. Their first year, played 126 games through 1993, 115 points, which is a hell of a point per game average. I'm going to go mid-tier for Kelly KISIO. I just can't separate him from the Rangers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think putting him at bottom would be a bit of the circ because he did almost average a point per game, which is always good
at the start of the franchise.
But a man who has no interest in your mid tiers, Joe Pavelski, just an absolute stud of a player for years. Probably could be easily argued as another potential face of the franchise type of player for San Jose. It doesn't quite meet the Marlo Thornton levels, though. Easy top tier player. Love Joe Pavelski.
Mike RICCI. I almost want to put him in the top tier because I don't want to get rid of him yet because we don't put him on there and he doesn't make this team. And I think he deserves to be in the conversation. More than Vincent Damphus, maybe a bit. I can't do it. I can't do it. So he's going to be eliminated. Fuck.
And obviously Jumbo Joe faced the franchise. Top tier. Top player.
Even if he didn't have over 1,000 points in 1,100 games, a fucking beard is going to skyrocket him up there. Who has the better beard, Jumbo Joe or Brett Burns?
Ooh, they are both legendary.
And so Joe Thornton goes up at number 1.
It's Pavelski number 2.
How about number 3?
For me, it's Logan Couture. We have Joe Thornton, Joe Pavelski, Joe Couture, and Joe Hurdle.
That group was really good. Let's ruin that with the left wing.
We have here on the left wing side, Mikkel Bedker, Ryan Clough, Jeff Friesen, Patrick Marleau, Milan Michalek, and Marco Strum.
Not bad players. The list is pretty short over here, with one exception. No really standout stars. No. Bedker's on here. He is a favorite of the two of us. Both really like Bedker. I don't think he ever got utilized properly in San Jose. Only 63 points in 155 games for them. So he's going to be a bottom tier, but get him out there more on the PK.
Next up, Ryan Clough, another guy that I remember from the mid 2000s. Thought he played a little bit more in San Jose. I mean, 400 games is obviously a lot, but I figured it's probably closer to 6 or 7. 271 points. I feel like he's bordering on the bottom, the mid tier for me.
See, I think he's a solid mid-tier.
Solid mid-tier?
Yeah, you see that he's got an assistant captain on there. You see a face full of blood there.
Yeah. That alone makes him mid-tier, that blood face.
Yeah, I mean, he played hard for him for a long time. Jeff Friesen, 512 games with the earlier days of the Sharks, starting in 1994, had 350 points in those 512. He's another high mid-tier. Patrick Marleau, face of the franchise, number 2 overall pick in the draft, right behind Jumbo Joe. He's a top tier guy. What about Michalek?
Another guy that we were fond of back when he played, Milan Michalek. 214 points in 317 games played. He traveled a bit throughout his career. I feel like he was on a lot of teams, it felt like. I would probably put him, based off his point per game, into that silver tier as well.
Marco Sturm, like a mid-range player. Wasn't there too early? Wasn't there too late? Right there in the middle years of the San Jose Sharks. Played really well for him, racking up 273 points in 553 games. I think he's probably a little bit lower on the mid-tier, but still a mid-tier for me.
Okay.
So Patrick Marleau is heading up. He's a sure bet pick. Or 3 spots, 4 players. Who do you think is the next one on?
Or I have 2 in mind, Clough and Friesen. Friesen would probably be my number 2 based off his points, with Clough at 3.
Better point per game, longer tenure. What do you like better?
Michalek is a better offensive player. But here, I think I'm gonna let tenure win out here.
I was at Marco Sturm because he is a name I associate with San Jose. So our 4 selections at the left wing spot are Patrick Marleau, Jeff Friesen, Ryan Clough, and Marco Sturm.
Let's finish out the forward. Let's keep the goalies for last. Well, let's go right wing.
Who are we looking at?
We have Jonathan CHEECHOO, Jonas Donskroot.
Donskroot?
Jonas Donskoy, Pat Fallon, Tony Granato, Mike Greer, Danny Heatley, Timu Meyer, Owen Nolan, Jeff Ogres, Timu Solani, and Devin Setaguchi.
Jonathan CHEECHOO is just a very odd player. What trophy is he holding up there?
Is that the Rocket Richard?
Rocket Richard, dude, tore it up one year and then disappeared. So I don't know what to do with him. Like,
he is a weird case.
Like, I almost want to go top tier, but
it was literally 1 year though. It was right when Joe Thornton came in. It was that very same year, because I remember reading about this. He scored 50 plus goals, and like 45 of them were when Joe Thornton came.
Here's his stats in San Jose. 9 goals, 28 goals, 56, 37, 23, 12, traded 5, demotion to the AHL, moving over to Russia. I'm going to give him at least a mid-tier, but it's that trophy that's getting it for him.
Jonas Donskoy, 5 years, 5 seasons basically in San Jose, 283 games played. I only really know the name, and it's recent, so decent numbers, but he's a bottom tier for me.
Pat Falloon, right there at the start with San Jose, 258 games starting in 1991, 162 points. Pat Falloon is a guy that I associate with, like, he's the first name that I think of with those early years. I'm going to give some mad respect for that top tier.
Next up is Tony Granato. The name sounds familiar, admittedly torn to me, so I do remember him in San Jose back then. But there's just nothing here that screams anything more than the bottom tier. 278 games played, 99 points. A little bit more penalty minutes, 387, which is all right, but he would be bottom for me.
Yeah, he was with the Kings from 89 to 96. He did have his best years as a member of the King, including one season with over a point per game average. Tony Granato is a hell of a hockey player. The entire Granato family, it's a hockey family. Cami Granato is fantastic. So I don't like putting a Tony Granato name down in the bottom tier, but we need to be realistic. So I'm glad that you talked about him, because I would have had a hard time saying Tony Granato bottom tier. And I'm having that same difficulty with Mike Greer, 221 games, 78 points. But a third line, grinding, heavy hitting, getting in front of the net, causing disruption, sticking up for teammates. I love Mike Greer. Bottom tier in San Jose.
The thing about Mike Greer type, and it's tough when you talk all-time teams, because Mike Greer will never come up in an all-time, realistically, on most teams.
No, but he's building a realistic team. You want him on there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. You want a Mike Greer type on your team. You strive for that, especially on the bottom 2 lines. And he's always wonderful to have, but he's never going to be associated with an all-time.
I don't even want a Mike Greer type. I want Mike Greer. I'm glad that he got to spend some time in Buffalo, because I'm just a big fan of his.
Yeah, I was too. Danny Heatley played a couple of years here in San Jose, damn near a point per game in his relatively short time. Played 162 games, basically almost damn near the entirety of those 2 full seasons. That's a short time, but it's a productive time. So at minimum, I would put him at least at probably the mid-tier.
Timo Meyer, current player for the San Jose Sharks. 263 games listed on here with 157 points. He's a good player, but he's a bottom tier for me.
Yeah, he's a solid player for their team right now. Although that picture makes him all that picture tells just it has Russian sleeper agent written on it for me. Just looks like you could say a few words in Russian, all of a sudden he's like a Russian secret agent or something. But yeah, I would agree. Solid player, bottom tier. Someone who isn't a bottom tier, Owen Nolan.
You don't think he's a bottom tier?
No.
Huh.
I think he's top tier.
Oh, that's odd.
Owen Nolan. I wouldn't say that they were my favorite team, but they were one of the first teams I followed as a kid, the San Jose Shark. I remember Owen Nolan really well, Pat Flynn pretty well. He was always a name. Owen Nolan was always a fun name for me. If there were nothing else, Owen Nolan. But he was a great player too, for the record.
The first superstar with San Jose.
Honestly, he could also be in a face of the franchise type of discussion.
Jeff Odgers started off with San Jose, 334 games, only 82 points. That's not very good. So why would Jeff Odgers be on here?
Well, that picture, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, what's in that picture, you ask? A big old C.
No, that's right. He was a C. But what I was getting at from you was 1,001 penalty minutes.
And I was getting there. And he also had 1,001 penalty minutes. We love those type of guys here at the Lunchroom Syndicate. But I feel like the captaincy matters here as well. And that's why I brought it up, which means that he was highly respected in that locker room.
Yeah, we love these types of players. He's a top tier player.
Next up, one of your favorite players of all time, Teemu Selanne, 131 points, 176 games. I am not going to defecate on his name, so he's going top tier for me. I don't care.
Yeah, it's Teemu motherfucking Selanne, man. And not just one, probably not even two or three. I don't know how many is in a set, if there's a set number in a set, but that's a lot of Gucci's. 267 games for Devin Setaguchi, 159 points. It's pretty decent. Kind of want to put him mid-tier, but I feel kind of dirty. Like I'm looking at Setaguchi. Would I rather have Mike Grier or Tony Granato or Devin Setaguchi? Setaguchi's on the bottom of that list for me. So
yeah. I'm with you on that one. And part of it for me was Setaguchi came in with a lot of promise and potential, and I don't think he ever really came close to reaching what many, including I would say us, thought he could be. So it's hard for me to put him in any other tier beyond the gold or the bottom.
We don't have to make up a decision on the players because we have four of them top tier. I think we agree that Owen Nolan would be number one.
Yes. Look at that goatee. That is a fantastic goatee, for the record. That is like the perfect goatee.
Yeah, it's a little too styled. It's a little too try hard for me. Fucking Pretty Boy just got himself demoted down to fucking orange tier. Who do you like at number two?
My initial thought was Falloon.
Pat Falloon, Teemu Odgers.
Yep.
Right wingers for the San Jose Sharks. I know we have four top tier, but three of these top tier are for character and name more than they are for
yes.
But our four players for the San Jose Sharks are Owen Nolan, Pat Falloon, Teemu Selanne, and Jeff Odgers.
That means, Jay, we have one more position.
The goalies. Our goaltenders for the San Jose Sharks that we're going to be looking at are Aaron Pads McGee.
Damn, those some bitchin' pads.
Arthas Urbe, Martin Jones, Evgeny Nabokov, Antti Niemi, and Vesa Taskula. Yeah, I changed it up from Tits McGee. I don't think Pads McGee works as well. It's like Tits McGee during her time of the month.
I was going to say it was the PG version.
Which really just kind of tells you about Aaron Dell anyway, so I think it works. Aaron Dell is on this list because he has fucking badass pads wherever the fuck he goes, and San Jose is amongst the best of them. Those are just fucking sweet as shit.
Those are fire.
He's getting the mid-tier for pads.
Arturs Irbe, their first goaltender. No, he was the first. That's something. Guy sucked, but he was his first.
Irbe did not fucking suck. Irbe was awesome.
Oh, I'm going by stats. He was bottom tier for me.
He's gonna go mid-tier then, because he was a top tier guy for me.
Oh wow.
Really like Irbe. I like his style. I watched a lot of Irbe. He was a guy that I watched a lot of game film. I studied film on Irbe, trying when I was learning how to play the all white pads. I can't say for sure it's because of Irbe, but like I'm looking at this picture and I'm like, yeah, that everything here looks right.
Well, I feel bad for shitting on him then.
He also went in here on the San Jose Shark team, won their first series in their first playoffs against the Detroit Red Wings, getting the upset.
And then that bumps him up to a mid-tier for me then.
Martin Jones, the worst starter in the NHL while he's in San Jose.
It seemed like it, but
man, like he had like one good year and then like, whoa, what the fuck happened?
He's bottom tier for me. More accurately with him, he was just extraordinarily streaky. When he was on, he was borderline Vezina worthy, and then when he was off, he was Chad Shope levels of bad. Inside jokes. Evgeny Nabokov, one of my favorites in the late 90s, early 2000s, before I stopped watching hockey. I love Nabokov. I think he's, coming into this, he was my clear-cut number one guy for the San Jose Sharks, so he's top tier for me.
Antti Niemi. He's strange. I think he got overlooked in Chicago a bit. The team was just real solid around him, and I don't think he got enough credit there. I'm gonna go mid-tier for Niemi.
He's a bit streaky.
Talk about Jones and streaky. No, see, I'm saying the opposite. I thought he was really consistent.
Yeah,
never consistently great.
Right, he was a consistently good. I think someone like Niemi, at that point in the Sharks' history in the early 2010s, they were going so hard for the cup that, they were every time they failed, they were always looking for a scapegoat, if you will, like the fans and the media and stuff. And I think Niemi was a huge part of that, along with even someone like Joe Thornton got a lot of that crap too. But
yeah, I think they brought in Niemi and they wanted Niemi to steal some games for him. And I never thought of him as a goalie that would steal games. I thought he was a goaltender that would be in there and wouldn't be the reason you lost him.
Finally, we have Vesa Toskala.
So where do you have Toskala?
Honestly, his career was, he was more backup than anything to the Nabokov. So for that reason, he's a bottom tier.
Our first one going up is Nabokov. And I want to see where you're leaning for number two, because you know where I'm at.
And kind of for the reasons you gave, I can't make an argument, nor do I really particularly want to, that the other two should be above Irbe.
So our two goaltenders for the San Jose Sharks, Evgeny Nabokov, Arturs Irbe. Our lineup for the San Jose Sharks, our top line of Patrick Marleau, Joe Thornton, Owen Nolan, just an all-time great.
Oh, yeah. Second line of Jeff Friesen, Joe Pavelski, and Pat Falloon. So
Okay, but starting to show their lack of depth a little bit. Third line, Ryan Clough, Logan Couture, Timu Solani.
and our fourth line of Marco Skern, Thomas Ninja Hurdle, and Jeff Odgers. Sorry.
Our top defensive pairing is a really good one with Marc-Edouard Vlasic and Brett Burns.
Our second pairing is Mike Rathje and Dan Boyle, also pretty solid pairing.
And Marcus Ragnarsson and ERIK KARLSSON pulling up our third pairing.
Indeed. And starting in net is Evgeny Nabokov.
With the backup of Arthur's Urbe. How do you anticipate this team finishing?
I can't imagine it's going to reach average, unfortunately, though. It could get there with the big name appeal, which is going to be important for us, obviously. But right now, when I look at this team, it's just I feel like it's going to be in the below average tier for all-time purposes.
Yeah, I do think there's going to be enough on here to keep them from the bad tier. I do think they're going to be below average, but maybe even on the higher end of the below average.
Mm-hmm.
Anaheim has a couple cups, and this team might be better than Anaheim.
Yeah, it's true. That is true. They only got one cup for their one cup.
Oh, and they went to another.
Okay. They went to another. They should have won that one, but New Jersey. And this has been another edition of the Lunchroom Syndicate's all-time team, the San Jose Sharks. Hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think down below. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? You know the drill. I am Christopher. That is Jay. Until next time. Deuces.
Deuces.